Few serial killers have captured notoriety and media fame like Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker. Active between 1984 and 1989, Richard Ramirez was a brutal killer, rapist, and burglar whose crimes were only heightened by the Satanic Panic of the 80s. Today, we're taking a closer look at the case of Richard Ramirez and diving into how some killers are made while others are born killers. Ricardo Richard Leyva Munoz Ramirez was born February 29, 1960, to Julian and Mercedes Ramirez, and was the youngest of their 5 kids in El Paso, Texas. His father was a former policeman and worked long hours as a laborer in the Santa Fe Railway and was known to have a short temper and violent outbursts that often led to abuse. Richard was also accident-prone himself and sustained major head injuries when he was very young and still developing mentally, including a dresser falling on him and cutting open his head, and a swing hitting him so hard that he was knocked out, and these traumas would also cause Richard to suffer from severe epilepsy. These 2 events, in retrospective, are what led psychiatrist Michael H. Stone to describe Richard as a made psychopath instead of a born psychopath. Stone stated that Richard's schizoid personality disorder, paired with the temporal lobe epilepsy, aggressivity, and hypersexuality he developed later from his childhood head traumas, are largely responsible for Richard's ability to be a ruthless and remorseless serial killer. However, these wouldn't be the only influences on Richard's disturbing tendencies. When he was around 12 years old, Richard began spending lots of time with his older cousin Miguel. Miguel Ramirez was a Green Beret and a veteran of the Vietnam War, who often boasted about his gruesome war exploits with his younger cousin. Miguel even went so far as to show Richard photos of people he had murdered and women he had raped, with several photos showing Miguel holding up a severed head of a woman he had raped and decapitated. Richard began to distance himself from his family, going so far as to sleep in cemeteries to avoid his father's abuse, and began to grow even closer with his cousin. Miguel strengthened the bond between him and Richard when he went so far as to teach his younger cousin Green Beret military tactics that included stealth and kill techniques. On May 4th, Miguel shot his wife Jessie with a .38 caliber revolver after an argument right in front of Richard, who was 13 at the time. Miguel was found not guilty for the murder of his wife by reason of insanity and was released after serving only 4 years in a mental institution. Reportedly witnessing this event caused Richard to withdraw from everyone around him, including friends and family. He was sent to live with his older sister Ruth, but this would not have any positive impact on the boy. Ruth's husband was an obsessive peeping Tom and would even take Richard out with him on his nighttime excursions. While out, the 2 would peer into windows of unsuspecting women in hopes of finding them undressing. This was also the same time that Richard would start taking LSD and began his intense, lifelong fascination with Satanism. As a teenager, Richard picked up a job at a Holiday Inn while still attending school. It was here that he began to burgle, using the skills he had been taught by Miguel, and would use his employee key to break into rooms and rob people while they slept. One night, a man returned to his room and caught Richard attempting to rape his wife. The man brutally beat Richard up. However, since the couple was from out of town and didn't want to return to testify against Richard, the charges were dropped. Regardless of the charges being dropped, Richard was of course instantly fired. Not long after, Richard dropped out of high school, and in 1982, at the age of 22, decided to move out to California. The Night Stalker would be born on April 10, 1984, when Richard would kill 9-year-old May Lung in the basement of a hotel that he was staying at. He gruesomely beat and raped the girl before stabbing her to death and hanging her body carelessly from a pipe. Despite this being the first known killing Richard was involved with, it wasn't actually credited to him until 2009, some 20 years after his arrest and incarceration. His next killing was not long after, on June 28, 1984, when he broke into the apartment of 79-year-old Jenny Vical and brutally stabbed her to death. After she died, Richard slit her throat so intensely that her head was nearly separated from her body. After Richard was discovered to be the Night Stalker, he would be tied back to this case via a fingerprint he left when removing a mesh screen from her window to gain access to the apartment. Richard's next known crimes wouldn't be committed until March 17th of the following year, when he brutally attacked Maria Hernandez after she entered her garage. He aimed and shot Maria in the face, but by some crazy miracle, she was able to survive when she raised her hands to protect her face and the bullet ricocheted off the keys in her hand. Her roommate, on the other hand, was not so lucky. After hearing the gunshot, Dale Ozaki, Maria's roommate, ducked behind the counter in the kitchen, but when she raised her head to see where Richard was, he shot her once in the forehead, killing her instantly. His bloodthirst not quite sated, less than an hour after these crimes, Richard fled to Monterey Park, where he yanked a woman out of her car and shot her twice with a .22 caliber handgun. Although she survived the attack initially, the woman, 30-year-old Tsai Lian Veronica Yu died upon arrival at the hospital. With 2 murders and 1 near miss in one night, the media was ablaze with the prospects of a new serial killer on the loose in California. With a loose description they were able to get from Maria Hernandez, the only one of Richard's victims to survive up to this point, the media deemed her attacker the walk-in killer and the valley intruder, and warned the public that he had curly hair with bulging eyes and wide-spaced rotten teeth. Just 10 days after the crime spree, Richard broke into the home of Vincent and Maxine Zazura. 64-year-old Vincent was killed with a shot to the head from a .22 caliber handgun, and Maxine was beaten and bound while Richard robbed the house. While Richard was distracted, Maxine managed to escape and grab a shotgun that she aimed at Richard, but tragically the gun was unloaded. Richard was infuriated and shot her 3 times until she died, and then horribly mutilated her body, including gouging her eyes out, placing them in a box, and taking them with him. An unaware Richard also left behind a distinct footprint from a pair of Avia sneakers, which the police were able to collect. This footprint, as well as some left behind bullets, matched others at Richard's other crime scenes, and the police were able to determine with some certainty that there was a new serial killer afoot. Richard continued to kill unabashedly into 1985. He would frequently tie his victims up and threaten them into telling him where their valuables were, while also coming up with a variety of ways to get them to swear to Satan. He also used lipstick he could find to draw pentagrams on walls and bodies, which only added fuel to the fire of Satanic Panic. At the time, Richard would also occasionally leave his victims alive. In one particularly interesting case, he was bludgeoning a 16-year-old girl with a tire iron while she slept before he began choking her with a cable. While choking her, the cable sparked and the girl began breathing again. Richard viewed this as a sign of divine intervention from Jesus Christ himself. Towards the end of 1985, Richard moved his crimes to San Francisco, and on August 18th, he broke into the home of Peter and Barbara Pan. Peter was shot while sleeping, and Barbara was beaten and assaulted before being shot in the head. Ramirez then used Barbara's lipstick to not only draw a pentagram, but also write Jack the Knife on the bedroom wall. Richard once again left a footprint from Avia sneakers, this time distinct enough for officers to identify the size and make. They were able to determine that only 6 Avia sneakers existed in Richard's size, making it a lot easier to track down the buyer, which would have led police right to Richard. Unfortunately, the mayor at the time, Dianne Feinstein, mentioned this information at a press conference, much to police's chagrin. The detectives knew that Richard would be keeping up with the media coverage of this crime, and his slip-up would give him more than enough time to get rid of the shoes before police could track him, which he absolutely did, dumping the shoes off the Golden Gate Bridge that very night. Luckily, Richard's reign of terror would still come to an end soon after. On August 24th, Ramirez attempted to break into the Romero home, but fled when Romero's son heard Richard lurking and woke up his family. James, the son in question, was able to rush to the window and get the license plate number off of Richard's stolen car. Following this, Richard went to another nearby home and broke in, shooting a man named Bill Carnes 3 times in the head before introducing himself as the Night Stalker to Bill's fiancée Inez. He then beat and raped her and told her to tell them the Night Stalker was here before fleeing the home. Luckily, both Bill and Inez were able to survive, and Inez's information, paired with the license plate number, were key in the downfall of Richard. Police were able to get a solid fingerprint from the stolen car once they found it, and were able to trace it back to one Richard Ramirez, who had previously been brought up on traffic and drug violations. His picture was posted everywhere in California. However, Richard was not aware of this, as he had been out of town visiting his cousin. On August 31st, 1985, Richard returned to Los Angeles early in the morning and overheard some elderly woman referring to him as the killer. This was when he noticed his photo plastered on every screen and newspaper and tried to make a break for it, but a group of civilians chased him down and held him until police could arrive, with one man even battering Richard over the head with a metal bar. Richard's trial was nothing if not sensational, starting with Richard drawing a pentagram on his hand and yelling "Hail Satan," and also including a juror who was murdered by her boyfriend and had to be replaced. Richard's trial was also flocked by young girls who were obsessed with Richard and seeking a romantic relationship with him. On September 20th, 1989, Richard Ramirez was convicted on 13 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, 11 counts of sexual assault, and 14 counts of burglary, and he was sentenced to death by gas chamber. However, Richard would end up dying at the age of 53 of B-cell lymphoma in 2013 due to slowdowns with appeals. Thankfully, this is the end of the story of the Night Stalker. Comment your thoughts down below and let us know any other stories you'd like us to cover. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one, and we'll see you in the next one.